Very much. Okay, Emma, if you want to get the mic so we can move right on to the questions. And this is really your chance to ask what we think of, and I will take the privilege of the chair to ask the first question while we're getting set up, and that is two women who spoke to me earlier and had to leave. Can we get beyond partisan politics in the whole redistricting process? And Susan, why don't you lead us off?
Absolutely. I absolutely think we can, and you know what? I've been looking at a lot of models statewide, nationwide. I would like to see us go following a model that California does, where they select 13 people who have never held political office, never been involved in a chair or committee person position in any political party, who are then provided only outlines of townships, boroughs, cities, and counties, and the population. And those numbers are redistricted to try and make them as concise and consolidated as possible. I think that would be a great way for us to move it.
Unfortunately, the court has required that we consider other things besides merely population. For example, if there's an opportunity to make a majority-minority district, we're required to do that. So a plan that doesn't take into those facts is going to be one that will wind up being struck down by the court. So therefore, the system we've got right now, although it has been criticized, and it does sometimes yield pretty poor results, one of the things that ought to be borne in mind is that there's set up a tiebreaker right now who is nonpartisan. Both parties are participating, but the tiebreaker is chosen either typically by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So I'm open to other systems that might be borne in mind, but we do need to make sure that we have a full understanding of all of the rules that are associated with redistricting to make sure that we don't create systems that are going to be struck down by the courts.
Thank you. Is there a question from the floor? I don't think I understand what you mean by a majority-minority district. Could you explain that, please?
Yes. If there is a minority group, particularly this is an issue that came out of the civil rights movement for African Americans, if there's a district that can be created that will be majority Hispanic, majority African American, the Supreme Court has required the system to make sure that they make those opportunities available. So you'll see a number of districts that look somewhat odd in shape, but they're geared around the idea of redressing what is considered to be long-term inequities in voting rights, and those are still requirements that we're expected to follow today.
Susan, you want to follow?
I will say that California's model does follow the same, have the same sort of guidelines within it. And other states that have other models that look good, we cannot follow because we do fall under the same guidelines that California does, which is why I would suggest that we follow along that model.
Another question.
How will you both work with responsible management of the Marcellus shale sites?
Okay, we led off the last time. Okay, Chris?
Well, actually, I think I answered the last
Yeah,
question.
everyone.
Go ahead, Susan.
Okay. Beat you to it. We need to have a good severance tax, and that has, of course, passed the House, and we're waiting to see what's going to happen in the Senate. And there'll be a lot of negotiating going on as that continues. But what we need to do is make sure that those severance taxes go to reinvigorating DEP so that we can have strong regulation to make sure that our environment is safely taken care of well. If we don't have regulations that truly have teeth to them, we'll end up with wells that have 10, 20, 30, 5,000 violations, and yet they continue, and that can't happen. We need to take care of the communities that are impacted and help with their infrastructure funds. I would also like to see Pennsylvania issue a challenge to the gas companies to find a way to do the fracking, which is the way they extract the gas. Right now they use millions of gallons of chemically laden water, and they don't share what's in those, what chemicals they're using, because there's some secret recipe. I'd like to see us challenge the gas companies to find a way to frack without using those waters. And if they can do that, we would be able to reduce a small portion of their severance tax, in which case I believe that they'll then look towards creating something, a new way, whether it's using ultrasound or another form of doing it. Because we are a nation of innovators. Given the opportunity, we can fix so many issues. But we have to do something. The amount of water that's coming, they're pulling out of the ground, and then we're unable to return to the ground, and or ended up polluting, is going to be a long-term crisis for Pennsylvania if we don't take care of it now.
I've been active on the Environmental Resources and Energy Committee reviewing the regulations that have been put into effect, and they have been strengthened. We actually had an independent review of environmental regulators from across the country look at the current regulations, because this has come on so rapidly, and I know Secretary Hanger has been interested in trying to make sure that we are fully prepared. And they actually just came out with a report yesterday that indicated that we have strengthened the regulations very well, that they are quite strong, and they gave us a very good grade in terms of the condition of the regulations. I did just earlier this week vote for severance tax, and had previously voted for an earlier version in the Environmental Resources Committee. I would point out, when getting back to the issue of partisanship, I was extremely disappointed, and I shared my concerns with Representative Evans from the Democratic leadership, that they failed to negotiate either with the Republicans who were favorable to the severance tax in the House, or with the Senate, who were ultimately going to have to sign off on any tax. They didn't reach out. They didn't work a joint agreement, which is what is going to need to be done. We're now in a position, because of the time frame, that the bill that we've sent over to the Senate is unacceptable to them. They've made that plain. We're going to be in next week. The Senate will be in the week we're not in. So prior to the election, they will pass a bill, send it back to us, and then they're done for the year. We'll be in a position of either having to accept the Senate version exactly as it's written without any further changes, or do without the tax until we come back in, and realistically that means March or April. So I'm very disappointed in the lack of bipartisan effort. I've expressed that to the leadership on the other side, and I'm looking forward to seeing if we can't do a better job in the future.
Okay, please raise your hand if you've got a question.
I'm wondering how much Pennsylvania is working to use some of these funds. I think they're federal funds for bridges and highways and whatnot, for public transportation, and if there are funds that you can use to put into developing green energy jobs here rather than, manufacturing wind turbines and things overseas. I'm just wondering, because that would help the economy too, and certainly get our highways and uncluttered and help the environment. So I'm just wondering.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, most of the transportation funding is basically state generated through the sales tax, or through gas taxes, and also through registration fees. We do get some limited monies from the federal government, and obviously we got stimulus funding. The problem with stimulus funding is a lot of it was expected to go into capital improvements. Some of that did go to mass transit. Some of it went to shovel-ready projects that were here in the Commonwealth. Many projects that were worthwhile were not qualified because the engineering and the environmental clearances had not yet been done. So we were somewhat limited in the way we were able to use the funds. Clearly, we have a major challenge ahead of us in terms of our infrastructure: roads, bridges, mass transit, and also sewer and water projects. We are way underfunded. We need to find and develop some very substantial ways to increase the resources available. On green energy, there's been an exciting development down in the Navy Yard. There was a joint effort I had something to do with also in helping, where we applied to the federal government and were chosen over places like the Lawrence Berkeley Lab Center around out in California to be a green building hub, green energy hub, which is designed to actually connect early research and also tie it into new businesses, jobs, and job creation here in the Commonwealth and in the region around southeastern Pennsylvania, Newcastle County, and counties in New Jersey. There are 100 organizations that were part of this coalition, and along with the important biotechnology research that's being done that is also creating jobs, the jobs around green energy, conservation, and new creation of battery technologies and things along those lines, I think are very exciting. We now have to capitalize on that at the state level and be thoughtful about how we can support that effort and also remove barriers that might be interfering with its success.
Okay, Susan?
We are certainly facing a number of huge issues in Pennsylvania. Mass transit development, infrastructure development. One of the coalitions that I'm involved in that I really think has a nice answer is the Building One Pennsylvania Coalition. What they're looking to do is reinvigorate our boroughs and small cities that have been dying off and increasing the sprawl that eats up our open space. But it also requires us to have more roads, requires us to provide more municipal services, where what we could do is rebuild our small boroughs, our cities. We can then start bringing in some more mass transit-ish opportunities. They have a lot of great folks working with them, from people at Franklin Marshall and the Q Charitable Trust, and another number of organizations that are really developing a nice set of guidelines to help us bring the entire state together to do a better job with infrastructure. As far as green jobs, I think that we really need to encourage our business growth, which means, and I've heard Dan Arado speak to reducing the corporate tax to a lower rate, but then making sure that the loopholes that are there that allow certain corporations not to pay any tax, so that we're more fairly taxed, will help bring us forward, and I think that makes an awful lot of sense.